Thank you, Hannah. Now, please welcome again our board chair, Mercedes Sherrod Evans, and President Brian Pellinen. When a college issues an honorary degree, it does so because the recipient of the degree is someone who upholds and lives as an example of something that we want for ourselves and for our college community. This year, we are so very proud to honor a very accomplished and inspirational artist, Paul Emmanuel. Will Lynn Cooney and Paul please come up?
So it's my pleasure to give the introduction to Paul Emmanuel, a dear friend and someone I've known for many years, and so happy that he's able to be with us today. Paul Emmanuel's practice engages in the issues of our time. He brings to life a daring vision executed with a sensitive and careful hand. Born in Kabwe, Zambia, and earning a degree in fine arts from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, Emmanuel's multi-disciplinary practice explores how psychic and physical landscapes interact in their construction of memories and identities. From intricately incised drawings on carbon paper to site-responsive public art projects, Emmanuel unifies deep meaning with acute attention to detail and technical skill. His groundbreaking and powerful artworks center the male figure, often examining his own body as an elegiac site of gender signification. Emmanuel's so-named counter-memorials interrogate who and how we remember. Notably, in his 2014 site-responsive project, Lost Men France, Emmanuel erected a field of ghostly banners depicting male vulnerability adjacent to the Thiepval Memorial to the Missing of the Somme, a war memorial in France as part of the First World War centenary celebration. In his third iteration of Emmanuel's Lost Men series, The Lost Men France is a testament to Emmanuel's unique ability to boldly transform the ephemeral to the monumental. Most recently, Emmanuel has continued to investigate constructions of masculinity through a U.S. student Fulbright Fellowship, which enabled Emmanuel to receive his MFA in studio art from the Maryland Institute College of Art in 2022. In grateful appreciation of your artistic contributions in the arts, the Doctor of Fine Arts honoris causa is bestowed upon you, Paul Emmanuel.
By the authority of the Board of Trustees of Montserrat College of Art, I confer upon Paul Emmanuel the degree of the Doctor of Fine Arts, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, honors, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Emmanuel.
I know that in 2025, it's not that big a deal for a guy to wear heels, but for me, it's huge. I wear these heels to face my fears. I really had to psych myself to do this today. I grew up in South Africa during apartheid when it was illegal to be gay, and doing something like this would have been scorned and ridiculed. I would have been branded degenerate, a maker of degenerate art. Right now, I can still hear an irritating little voice in my head saying to me, who'd give an honorary doctorate to something like you? And so, thank you to the Montserrat faculty and trustees for giving this award to someone like me, and for not going along with the politics of our time. Montserrat College of Art is a place where I can feel at home, a place that allows me to be my sparkly self. And I salute you, graduates of 25, while wearing my sparkly heels. I want to impart some of my provocative energy onto you, the new generation of makers. I believe that whatever pushes you to face your fears can ultimately empower you to stand up, be seen, heard, and valued on your own terms. I want to inspire you to be brave, be audacious, to be strong, and to be true to yourselves. I encourage you to find your own sparkly heels, whatever you perceive them to be. Take the risk, put them on, and just as the Lady Gaga memes urge us to climb our cringe mountains, I want to motivate you to embrace your perceived challenges, even if they seem ridiculous or uncomfortable. I also wear these heels as an homage to anyone who wears them, and to my mom, who passed away in 2017, who also wore heels. I wear them for you too. I had to practice walking around in these things just so as not to fall and break my neck in a spectacular honoris causa disaster. I wear these shoes to lift our spirits and as a reminder for me to not take myself too seriously. This makes me recall one of my most epic failures to try and impress someone in 2011. I was given a show at my first commercial gallery in the United States, a prestigious, well-respected space in Baltimore. On arrival at the gallery, I was bursting with pride and anxiety. I wanted to make a good first impression to the gallery CEO, who'd gone out of her way to make me feel like a superstar. The show looked pristine, the buffet spread delectable. Everything was ready for a high-toned opening reception fit for a head of state. Into the gallery I waltzed, with a sweater casually draped over my arm, blissfully oblivious to the impending doom. Temporarily left at the door from the previous exhibition stood an expensive sculpture made up of a tree branch, carefully balanced with lots of multicolored billiard balls. With my arms flapping around in my usual flappy way, my draped sweater caught the branch by mistake, wrecked the sculpture, and sent what seemed like hundreds of billiard balls flying through the air and onto the floor. It was like one of those B-grade movie slow motion scenes with the gallery CEO and I just standing there with the rictus of horror on our faces. Boing, boing, crash, crash, goes the branch, balls everywhere, then silence. And all I could do was wince, turn to the gallery CEO and say, "Oh dear, is it all right if the balls do that?" Not my most shining moment. The actor Will Rogers once said, "Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from judgment." That was a really humbling experience, and I learned a lot about the art world and its facades. And so, I would say, when walking in your sparkly heels, risk taking some missteps. Missteps are our greatest teachers. Missteps reveal our prejudices, our preconceptions, our biases, and our assumptions. And as we all know, assumption is the mother of all slip-ups. I've had some of my own prejudices vanquished, indeed. In my research in the US, I interview a lot of military veterans who've served in the Middle East, because my dad was Lebanese. I'm exploring the United States' involvement in conflicts in the region for video installation works that engage ideas about masculinity. I must confess that I came to this country with all sorts of preconceptions about soldiers. To be honest, I thought they would be thoughtless, conservative, homophobic, macho patriots who had no conscience about what they do, especially in other countries. I also thought that someone like me would be rejected by most of them, most of the time, and if I did manage to meet at least a couple of military veterans, talking to them would, at the very least, confirm to me how narrow their worldviews must be. I was so wrong. Talking to veterans and soldiers has changed me in ways I cannot fully express. Their stories of survival, of hardship, resilience, humor, and acceptance fill me with such awe and horror and humility. Some of us have even become friends. One of them is a triple amputee from being blown up by a landmine in Iraq in 2003. He was also a speaking guest at the president's inauguration this year, and he invited me for a drink at the Hyatt in DC one day. While I wheeled him around the lobby in his wheelchair, a civilian came up to him, glanced nervously at his legless body, and said, "Thank you for your service." And you know what his response was? With a big grin, twinkle in his eye, he said, "Thanks, I had a blast." Afterwards, he pulls me aside and he tells me quietly, "You know, as a veteran, I feel awkward in so many ways when people thank me for my service. I'm not accustomed to praise. As soldiers, we're sustained on caffeine and negative reinforcement. We don't know what to do with praise. If instead a stranger came up to me in my wheelchair and barked, 'I still expect to see you at physical training, you slacker,' I'd probably take it as a compliment." I'm so lucky I stumbled into him during my research, literally in a grad school elevator in 22. Listening to veterans recount their complex, layered stories of military service and their conflicted feelings about duty, patriotism, and survival has taught me so much about what we take for granted as privileged civilians in hallowed spaces just like this. We're in such a precious place and time, you know. More about missteps. Sometimes I think a misstep is just a first step in disguise. In 2013, I remember how devastated I was when I was refused permission to put up an outdoor installation of banners in France next to a huge World War I monument in the countryside. I'd spent 3 years researching the right site for my installation, applied for a grant to get there from South Africa, failed to get the grant, reapplied for the same grant the following year, got the grant, learned how to drive on the other side of the road, learned how to speak a rudimentary French, made a fool of myself speaking rudimentary French, and finally found the perfect site, only to be turned down at the 11th hour. Why? Because the British authorities felt that my work was inappropriate, next to the memorial of the missing of the Somme on the French battlefield. After all those years of work, it was a disaster. Only after lots of crying with friends and several glasses of wine could I bring myself to see that it wasn't a misstep at all, but just step one. Yes, I was refused permission to put it up on the grounds of the monument, which is managed by the British government, but I was later granted permission to put it up on a privately owned farm next to the memorial grounds, managed by the French. As a result, the installation was read in a more powerful way by critics because of its perceived sensitivity to the site and the pilgrims who visited it. Since then, I've learned a few things about memorials and monuments, and that memorialization is something we all think about at some level. We care about the way we're perceived by others and how we'll be remembered. After all, that's why we take photographs. With each social media upload, we build little monuments to ourselves to remember beautiful moments just like this one. And unconsciously, all of us want to connect to something bigger than ourselves, to the eternal, to the divine. We are the stories we tell ourselves. When I first read about how the Q and T in LGBTQ+ were erased from the US National Park Service Stonewall Memorial website, I was deeply, deeply troubled. Stonewall is a national monument in New York City, dedicated to LGBTQ+ rights and history. It marks the site of the Stonewall riots of 1969, which ensued after police raided a gay bar there under the pretense that it didn't have a liquor license. Removing the letters Q and T from the website erases the fact that queer and trans people were at the forefront of those riots, which ultimately paved the way for LGBTQ plus rights. It sends shivers down my spine because it reminds me of how the apartheid government in South Africa also sought to silence the voices of those with whom it did not agree. If we erase the legacy of certain people, we erase them from public memory. And if I control the story of what you remember, I control you. I am the Q in LGBTQ+. And now I'm Dr. Q. Making art is a political act. Making art is a rebellious act. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, an American journalist, women's rights activist, and environmentalist, said, "Be a nuisance where it counts." In this era of erasure and invalidation, making art is a way to take back your power. As the author James Baldwin insisted, you have to decide who you are and force the world to deal with you, not with its idea of you. That's why institutions like Montserrat College of Art are so important. Why you, young makers, are so important. It may not seem to be so, but actually, if you're making anything right now, you're doing pretty okay. I love what theorist and poet Fred Moten said when he urges us makers to forget about trying to find ourselves when creating things. Instead, let's rather find ways in which we might try to lose ourselves. I think that this is his way of encouraging us to not be afraid to give up our self-consciousness, our egos. It's hard, you know. We risk being laughed at. We risk being criticized. We risk being vulnerable. Maybe we risk being labeled degenerate. In other words, the very thing that we perceive to be disempowering is often the very thing that can make us shine. So, graduates of 25, this is my way of saying, find your own sparkly heels, whatever you perceive them to be. Take the risk, put them on, find your balance, and walk tall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dr. Emmanuel. Your words inspire us and give us all courage for the next season.